If you've ever opened a door, if the door handles are designed well, you would know whether to push or pull. But if they're not, you'll hear people banging on doors because they're pushing or pulling when they're not supposed to.
Bad experience.
Right. If you don't have a good user experience, people will take a peek and they would leave.
Welcome to the Raw Spotlight Podcast, a series where we share our perspective on leadership, entrepreneurship, and the ever-evolving world of digital marketing. I'm Emily Au, co-founder of Ready Artwork, joined by my business partner, Victor Hood. Let's get started with the show. Hi, Victor.
Hello.
All right, so today we're going to go back to the basics. We're going to talk about what is UI UX. This question, it's a great question that, clients always ask us, what is UI? What is UX? It's a term that we use a lot and it's used together quite often. So what exactly is it?
Yeah. So and the reason why we want to talk about this is because we build a lot of websites. This term is used a lot in website development or design. It can also be used in like apps or any other types of interfaces. So when we use the term UI UX, it's usually a capital U, capital I, / forward / and then a U and an X, right? Mm-hmm. So user interface and user experience. Mm-hmm. So those are what the UI UX stand for. And what did it mean, right? User interface. So user interface, you can think about all the visual pretty things, like, for example, buttons, drop downs, forms, typography, right? Your navigation, your colors, your main colors, your secondary colors, your violating colors, right? So all those elements. Now UX is actually a little bit more user experience, is the overall feel and experience that the user experiences as they come to the website, right? So as a whole, if I come to the website, how do I navigate the website? How do I flow from one page to the next? And are there forms when I need them? Like if I'm looking to contact someone, or are they just randomly dropped everywhere, or they don't exist? Is there a map? Is there things that, all these UI pieces, you can take all the nicest UI, throw them all into one box, and it could still be a bad user experience if it's not flowing really well. So think of one as the overall flow of the website, and then the UI are the actual Lego pieces, if you will.
Okay, so to summarize, UI is user interface, and that is how things look in your website or app, right? UX is user experience, and it's really how someone it's navigated. How easy is it for your user to find information or complete a task?
Your goal is to try to make it as intuitive and simple as possible, right?
Absolutely.
I love like this example of good user experience. If you've ever opened a door, right? If the door handles are designed well, you would know whether to push or pull, right? But if they're not, you'll hear people banging on doors because they're pushing or pulling when they're not supposed to.
Bad experience.
Right. So that's a real world version of UI UX, right? Experience. If it's designed well, it's very easy. People walking up the door, 10 out of 10 will just push when they're supposed to, or pull when they're supposed to. When you hear the bang, 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 right? That's when you know that design was not well thought out.
Makes sense. Thank you for that analogy.
Yeah.
All right. So as a B2B company, a lot of clients like, well, I'm not a tech firm. Why should I care about UI UX? I'm not even e-commerce. Why would I care?
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Ready Artwork, we build a lot of B2B websites, and UI UX is a key conversation a key component of building a good B2B website, right? So, um, and for the most part, most B2B websites are their intent is really to generate leads to grow business for the organization. So if you don't have a good user experience, people will take a peek and they would leave. They would not leave their information because they're confused,
Mm-hmm.
right? If your navigation is hard to kind of figure out, or if the website's slow or things are confusing, people would just rather go to another website where they can find what they're looking for,
Yeah.
right? And so having good UI UX is just as important as any other piece of your marketing strategy.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Though you talked about leads. How does good UI UX actually drive sales leads?
Yeah, so we have this term called friction, right? We want to reduce friction when it comes to, let's say, getting to your contact form, right? Um, so how easy is it for someone to come to your website, learn what you do,
Mhm.
learn why you're the best at it, figure out all the pieces that they're looking for, whether it be process, pricing, location, right? Um, and get to the point where, okay, it checks all the boxes that I'm looking for. Now I'm ready to take the next step,
Mhm.
right? If that flows really well, then we call it, frictionless or reduced friction,
Mhm.
right? So people can get to that box really easily, right? There's a lot of things like we use another term called CTAs, so call to actions. So
Mhm.
you put them at the right place at the right time, then your chances of actual someone leaving their information is going to be a lot higher, right? So think of like calling a helpline or a actual telephone line. I mean, this is most companies are really bad at this, right? And you can't get a hold of someone. You call, and you know what? Forget it. I'm gonna go to the next person. So that's the other analogy of, frictionless or low friction websites, right? You want to make sure that it's not frustrating for customers to get what they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been like a lot of websites out there where I fill out forms and they put the main CTA, like nice and, nice button as a CTA, but that button is clear form rather than submit form. I've
Right.
done, yeah, I've gone to sites where I've clicked the clear form a couple of times to a point where, like you mentioned, it's a lot of friction to the
Mhm.
point where, I'm just gonna drop this. I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you're frustrating the customer. So they rather, that also represents you as a brand, right? So if the website experience is that bad, what is the customer experience going to be like if I actually hire this company,
Right.
right? They don't have basic knowledge of logic and flows, and it's going to be very frustrating. So that's also their first experience working with you. And if you don't have a really good experience on the website, it reflects poorly on your whole company.
Yeah. So how does a company tell if their website have a poor UI UX on the
Yeah.
site?
For sure, because most people is like, well, I don't know, right? It's just a website. I don't know what the user is doing. So if you're actually pulling up some basic data on like Google Analytics, for example, right? High bounce rates. So if you see a lot of people coming in and leaving right away, it's because they're frustrated or they're not. It's not engaging for them. Low conversions. So you're actually getting traffic, but you're not getting a lot of people filling out the forms or doing what you want them to do, sign up for emails, things like that, right? Um, it doesn't answer questions, right? So there's a few things that you can see, and then something a little bit more advanced is like you could probably put in like heat map tracking. That's another layer, right? Where you can actually see if people are clicking on the same thing over and over and over again. We call that like click rage, right? So that's a little bit more advanced way of telling if you have bad UI UX.
Mhm.
So those are some of the things. The first couple are pretty easy to figure out.
Right. Yeah. I love
Yeah. So
that heat maps because they do give you some insights on what users are doing on your site. Are they
Mhm.
clicking on things that they're not supposed to? Are they not clicking on your main CTAs when they are supposed to?
Right. There's a whole school of business called CRO, conversion rate optimization, right? We're not a full-blown CRO agency, but we do implement parts of that, which is when we do like audits, right? And what you want to do is you want to look for these signs and you want to adjust them and optimize over time. So if my conversion rate is not high, what are some of the things we can do to get that conversion rate up, right? So is it moving key components to the top fold, like a website? Top fold means the first thing that loads on your browser, right? Versus having to scroll down. There's basic principles that we know. Most people don't scroll to the bottom of a website. So if you have your meatiest, juiciest content on the second fold or third fold, that's something that can immediately be adjusted. But those are examples, right? So once you make examples like that, then you can measure, okay, so did my bounce rate change? Did my conversion rate change? And you want to measure that. And over time, as you adjust, your site will get better and better, right? It's not something that you just go out and have it redesigned and, it solves all your problems. In fact, that's what I don't recommend, right? Unless it's a really, really bad site to start with.
Okay. So is UI UX a one-time project, Victor?
Now, I see it as more of like an ongoing process. You depending on the severity after an audit, there are obviously we build a lot of websites, right? But that can get you to a better starting point if you're really far behind, right? But once you have that, you want to make sure that you're looking at your data on a regular basis and updating your user experience, right, on an ongoing basis. And that may change over time. We've just finished an episode about like AI and how that changes how the users are interacting with brands now. So just because you had a great UI UX like last year or 2 years ago, that user behavior may change too if you're all dialed in. So you do need to stay on top of that and look at the data.
Right. Yeah. So it makes sense. I think users, their behaviors do change, whether it be outside of your website on other platforms, as well as after they visit your site. Their behavior could change from year to year. And then your business goals would be changing as well, I suppose, for your website's user experience.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, for those of us that have been in business, at least over the last 6-7 years, it's been a crazy swing, pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID, pre-AI, now we're in the middle of AI, right? So it's been nonstop change. User behavior has been changing like really significantly. It felt like we had like probably 10, 20 years of changes all compressed in the last couple of years, right? So if you're not watching your data and adjusting, it's very easy to fall behind.
Yeah. All right, Victor, thanks. That was very insightful. So UI UX isn't just about making things look pretty. It's about aligning your business goals and really seeing what your users are needing, on your website. So if you're a B2B company wondering why your leads aren't converting, it might be time to take a closer look at your UI UX, user interface, user experience. Thanks, Victor. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, for sure. Great to share.
Yeah. So for our listeners, if you're running a B2B business or managing your digital strategy and you want help with your UI UX, check out our website at readyoutwork.com. From site structure to content to SEO, we're here to help you with your organization. Subscribe to the Raw Spotlight, share this episode, and let us know if there's any other topics that you would like to hear next. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Raw Spotlight podcast. We'll see you again next time. And be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.